Hello, Parisi Podcast. Welcome back. If you are watching this podcast, you recognize a little bit different background. If you're listening to this podcast, hopefully pod producer Josh did an awesome job cleaning up this video because I just purchased a new camera. So what else do you do when you get a new camera? You ask ChatGPT for some AMA style questions. You set everything up. You record an episode, you send it off to pod producer Josh in hopes that you don't mess it up and that it can be used. So that's what we're going to do today. This week's episode, we'll say it's a little special, but really we're breaking in the new camera. We're hoping everything goes well. I like to think of this as a fireside chat, but because we're all sports performance coaches to some capacity, we're in the gym, we're next to the cable machine, we're sitting on a plyo box, we're ready to go. And ChatGPT hooked up some amazing questions that we're going to run. So what I did was I asked AI for some AMA style questions for the Parisi Podcast. It gave me 6 actually really good questions. It's pretty scary how good AI can be, but I've got 6 awesome questions. We're going to give this a go. Hopefully, if you're listening or watching this episode, it means that I did not mess up the camera settings, which is really what we're here to do. But we've got some good nuggets coming up. I'm going to be flying solo, so you've got me answering these questions today. The first question is actually a really good one. What is the biggest performance myth you wish would disappear forever, but why does it still hang around like glitter after a craft project? That last sentence hits different as I record this. It's summer vacation. I have a 6-year-old, lots of arts and crafts. We're getting busy with all the glitter. But when it comes to the biggest performance myth you wish would disappear, what really, I'm going to look at it from the lens of speed training. I second what I've always heard from the great Steve Leo, the legendary track coach in New Jersey, Parisi Mount Rushmore performance coach. One thing he always said, if you're not running fast, you're not training speed. So the performance myth that I wish would disappear forever, but still seems to hang out, is this idea of training speed at sub-maximal intensities. I understand with different form-intensive movements like skipping, if you're doing some type of mechanical running series like an A-run or a build-up sprint, you may not necessarily be at true blue max velocity. But this idea that athletes can train speed at submaximal intensity, I think is not entirely true. I don't know if it's necessarily a myth, but a lot of facilities coaches, sport coaches will spend time moving at submaximal intensities in hopes of improving speed. But we know that from science that does not necessarily carry over. And we need to be at our max velocity to train things like max velocity, to train things like acceleration. So from a sports performance landscape, the performance myth, I wish we could get athletes moving at max velocity and just control the distance, the total volume that athletes are moving at max velocity rather than saying, hey, we're going to run at 60%, 65%, 70% so we can do more volume. I don't think that is really what carries over to sports performance. I'd rather see you manipulate work and rest ratios. I'd rather see you manipulate distance. I'd rather see you manipulate resistance or assistance in the exercise to change the neurological demands. There's a lot of variables that can be controlled rather than just saying, hey, let's run slower in hopes to get faster. I don't necessarily know if that is where we should be when it comes to sports performance in 2025. Second question. If you could go back and give your rookie coach self one piece of advice, what would it be? Pretty classic question, pretty cliche question, and one that I actually talked out with my wife this morning at breakfast because I do feel very fortunate that in my rookie years, we'll say from age 20 to 26, so I'll say a 6-year rookie period as a sports performance coach, I was very lucky to have really good mentors and be surrounded by a lot of veterans, whether it be longtime personal trainers, longtime performance coaches, obviously guys like Bill Parisi who have done it for decades, at the time, literally longer than I had been alive. So I just followed what they did and what they told me to do. And I was incredibly lucky. I don't take any of that for granted. So in answering the question, if I could go back and give myself one piece of advice, it would actually be to double down on one thing that I did in particular. So I live in northern Vermont. There's not a lot of gyms. There's not a lot of sports performance facilities. We have one Division I college. Every other college at the time, Castleton, Champlain, St. Michael's, even Norwich. Some of these facilities do have strength conditioning professionals now, but at the time, they didn't. And so I outsourced a lot of my education. I went down to Massachusetts every year to go to Parisi Sports Performance and shadow and just observe, talk to their interns, talk to their coaches, hit their sports performance seminars. I would go to Maine. I'd go to their state clinics, so the NSCA, New Hampshire state clinics, New York. I remember going to RPI for an Olympic lifting certification and workshop with Derek Johnson, who at the time was an Olympic qualifier. So one thing I did really well was I would go to these different places, typically within a 3-hour drive of where I live. That way I could get up early, make it a day trip. I didn't have to spend a lot of money on food or lodging overnight. Gas was the biggest expense, and I would pack a lunch. But I would double down on that. I would definitely say go more or plan to go further, save money to travel further, to go to different places that might be a direct plane from Burlington to someplace along the East Coast. Push the limits to drive, couch hop a little bit in my early 20s. But my advice to my rookie self would be to double down on that element of outsourcing my continuing education, but more so the networking aspect that came with that. Double down on it, spend more time doing it, invest a little bit more into it, figure out ways to save money to save the funds to actually go travel further, maybe get a hotel, grow your network, etc. But that was something that I did really well, that I would just do more of. So kind of a odd answer. I definitely wouldn't say do this instead. I would just say do this more because it did pay off. It worked really well. It helped drive my professional career and professional success. I would just want to do more of that. Question number 3. What's the most underrated exercise or drill that you think every athlete should be doing, but hardly anyone is? This is an interesting question as well, because I know what drill I wanted to do. I had one drill that jumped right out. It was a drill that I do still to this day. I do it with adults. I do it with young athletes. I do it in warm-ups. I do it as fillers. I do it as different conditioning-based tools, drills, exercises. I think it's pretty mainstream, though, but it's pogo hops. You could say rudimentary jumps, part of the rudimentary jump series. I think those are phenomenal as well. But specifically the low pogo, whether it be forward stationary with a slight lateral side-to-side movement. I think the pogo is popular, but what I will say is that because it tends to be a very entry-level exercise or entry-level drill, it's quickly progressed. A lot of athletes will start with it, they'll do it, coaches will program it into a training program, but they're very quick to move away from that drill and the benefits that come with it. The reason I think that everyone should be doing it, regardless of skill, ability, age level, professional, amateur, whatever, is because it's very hard to mess up, and it really targets the foot, ankle, and calf complex. And the more I'm around sports performance, the more that I am talking to individuals who rehab in sports performance, who train in sports performance, I see issues with the lower leg. And I think that if we're moving past the basics too fast, or we're not maintaining a certain level of volume and exposure utilizing the basics, we're doing our athletes a disservice. It's an incredibly doable exercise, but it's also an exercise that can help fill in the gaps, fill in volume for these higher impulse plyometrics that we want to get athletes to, but we often neglect the actual outcome that we're trying to drive with our athletes. So pogo jumps would be my answer. Any variety, forwards, backwards, stationary, but quick, low, rapid impulses in the ground. Incredibly low skill, but with incredibly high rewards for all athletes of all ages. Pogo jumps would be my answer. Let me pull up. That's me. ChatGPT's trying to talk to me and apparently has a voice. So pod producer Josh probably have to do a little back end on that one. All right. Question number 4. When you think about athletic performance in 2035, what do you think will be standard practice that isn't even on most people's radar today? It's a really good question. It's a question that I don't know if I'm qualified to answer, but I'm going to take a shot at it anyway. So what I think is not on the radar today, but is going to be on the radar in 2035, I think it's becoming more popular, is the idea of odd implement training. I don't mean odd implement like strongman training. I mean tools like the Aqua Bag with a dynamic resistance profile, tools like the Viper Pro. If you've followed the Parisi Podcast, you know we've had Michelle Dalcourt on, creator of the Viper Pro, and puts out some phenomenal education behind that tool. Bill Parisi obviously does a lot of work with Tidal Tank. Parisi loves Tidal Tank. I'm looking at 2 of them right now in my own gym that I use with all ages, athletes, abilities as well. But it's this idea of a dynamic profile of resistance that is just a little different than your traditional barbell, dumbbell, kettlebell. And those have a place. Those are very useful. But it's this idea of resistance that is either so light, right? If you have an Aqua Bag and you fill it with 3 pounds of water, the resistance isn't going to be a limiting factor, but it's going to train the velocity of movement more, and probably in a very safe way, so long as the pattern is chosen correctly for the individual. But it's incredibly, you heard me say this phrase with the Pogo answer, but it's incredibly doable, where you can have dynamic resistance, an emphasis on velocity. You can emphasize body position to the specificity of the sport or the individual. And weight is not going to be a limiting factor like it can be. And we see this in our Parisi Speed School. We utilize a lot of strength standards so that when athletes get to a 55-pound trap bar, they're physically able to move the girth behind a 55-pound trap bar, a 45-pound barbell. I'm looking at a set of power block dumbbells that I have in my gym that start at 20 pounds. For some people, that weight can be a limiting factor. However, when you look at something like an Aqua Bag, Tidal Tank, whatever synonymous terms in this case, what you're really looking at is something that can be adapted to the individual for the resistance needed. But the dynamic resistance profile is what we're really looking at for a training stimulus. And I think in 2035, those type of implements will be incredibly popular. They're becoming more popular now. I'm surrounded by it in Parisi land, so I think it's very common. But the more trainers that I talk to, the more trainers that go into our All Access program or join the Parisi Network, and they start to see some of the education surrounding a tool like Tidal Tank. What's really interesting is it's still so foreign to them. And it's almost a fresh of breath air because they're able to do more athletically inclined training modalities away from your traditional weight room setting, but also really being able to work with an athlete in conjunction to a traditional strength training program. I'm not saying you don't need to get strong. You absolutely need to get strong. But we have this debate a lot in the Parisi Coaches Network. How do you develop athletic qualities with an individual that can't do a push-up, can't do a chin-up, can't squat 25% of their body weight? Yes, we work on that, but that athlete needs to be able to do some type of velocity-based work, whether that be a dynamic punch with an aqua ball, whether that be some type of loaded snap down, a close chain plyometric movement. These are the type of implements that we can use with anyone, regardless of athletic ability, and still achieve a desired training result, whether it be alongside or progressing with a more traditional strength training program. So something that was just really interesting. I thought ChatGPT gave a really good question there, and I wasn't quite sure because I'm, as far as future science, future technology. I'm not sure what is going to come into play 10 years from now, but what I do think is we're going to see different loaded velocity, dynamic profiling type resistance tools that are just going to become more accessible as well. Something like the title take, the Aqua Bowl that I'm looking at right now was a Prime Day deal, which was awesome for me as a professional. I'm able to go buy some equipment for under $50. That's huge, right? So the price points are coming down. It's becoming more accessible. Education's getting out there from great sources like Bill Parisi and the Parisi Speed School. That's where I think we're going in 2035. Question number 5. What's the weirdest, most unexpected piece of performance advice you've ever given or gotten that actually worked? Okay, so I have 2 things that jump out. One very recent, one was early on in my career. So very recently, when it comes to actual performance, I recently did a sweat test here in Vermont. I met with a local registered dietitian in this company that came over from Europe, I believe in England, is Precision Hydration. They did a sweat test. So they put some cream on my forearm that made my skin hot. They put a little vibrating pad on it to make my forearm sweat. They extracted the sweat and they tested the concentration of my sweat to see how salty of a sweater I am. Now, the performance side of this test was a nutritional recommendation. And it was before my morning workouts, the day before, the afternoon prior to the morning workout, was to have an electrolyte drink, but also add a little bit of salt to that electrolyte drink so that for me, I'm right around 1,400 milligrams of sodium. Now, that is a number that is unique to the individual, but the performance piece of advice that I was kind of shocked with was to drink this throughout the afternoon. Don't slam it as one drink, but after lunch, sip on this drink. Every time I'd open the fridge, I'd have a little bit. I would just drink it in conjunction with my water bottle throughout the afternoon, whatever, between clients, training sessions. But what I noticed was not necessarily an improvement in my hydration for my morning workouts, but the level of sleep quality that I was achieving because I was more hydrated going to bed. And whether it be sodium for the nervous system and muscles through a recovery period at night, whether it be just general hydration or a focus on general hydration, whether it was the actual sodium intake or the electrolyte intake, the performance the next morning was fine. I have not noticed a difference in my performance training. I normally train when the sun comes up, so I haven't noticed a difference in my performance there. But what I have noticed is, and this is tracked through my Garmin watch, I can see a noticeable improvement in my sleep score, my HRV overnight, is just that. How crazy that nutritional intervention has been for improving sleep. I wake up better, I'm way less groggy, my sleep quality is better. So that hydration piece, that sodium piece, was something super unexpected that definitely has helped me. And I would say paying attention to your hydration early in the afternoon. I'm talking we're making just sips throughout the afternoon, 14 to 16 ounces of total liquid over 6 hours from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. And then I'm not waking up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night or anything because it's just a little slight addition to what I'm already drinking. So super interesting there. That's on the straight performance side. The second piece of information that really stuck out to me, I don't know if it's a true answer to this question, but it came from a presentation done by Eric Cressy early in my career. This had to have been 2012, 2011. I was at their sports performance seminar in Hudson, Massachusetts. Eric Cressy's giving a presentation. He's the big keynote guy, right? The final guy doing. And he said something to me that still stands out in my mind. He said in his presentation, there's a lot of people who want and wish. There's not a lot of people who do and take action. Okay, there's a lot of people who want and wish, but there's not a lot of people who do and take action. And if you're someone who does and take action, you will always have success in your career. And it really stood out because at the time, and this still, I was a business major. I was entering the world of sports performance. I was a certified personal trainer through AFA, which has now since been acquired by NASA, National Academy of Sports Medicine. And I was sitting and studying for the CSCS test, and I felt so out of place. And it was refreshing to see this guy, Eric Cressy, who has, maybe reached the pinnacle of career and life success. He's the director of human performance for the Yankees. He's got multiple performance locations, and he has become the guy when it comes to baseball performance training. Say, basically, if you're willing to make things happen, you will do fine in this industry. And that wasn't regardless, it's in regards to maybe educational differences. I lived in northern Vermont, so I'm in a demographic area that's just not your traditional hotbed for athletic performance. Like you heard me say earlier, there was only one college strength conditioning department in the state, and had at the time 3 professionals, 2 paid, 1 intern. So there just wasn't a lot going on in sports performance outside of our Parisi Speed School. And it was just reassuring to know that if I worked hard and I took action, if I made things happen, that things would happen. So it was incredibly unexpected. It still sticks with me literally 15 years later. I think about that a lot. So I thought that'd be a nice piece to share here for this episode. All right, the final question. ChatGPT did a really nice job of these questions. If you could create your own performance hall of fame, what's one non-athletic skill or habit you'd induct first? What's one non-athletic skill or habit you'd induct first? So it's a very open-ended question. I am biased. So what I would induct first, in the most blunt phrase, would be consistency, and just consistency in action. But that's pretty broad. So I wanted to kind of maybe peel the onion back a little bit there on what a good answer can be. And it's this idea of habit stacking. James Clear is an author. He wrote a phenomenal book called Atomic Habits. I recommend it to everyone. If you haven't read it, please. I think you can probably pick up a used copy for a couple bucks. And I know it goes on sale often with Kindle and Audible for, again, a couple bucks. It is super accessible in today's world, and it's a phenomenal book. But James Clear writes about habit stacking, where you pair 2 activities together to improve consistency. It's like going to the gym and foam rolling. You may not foam roll at your house, but if you go to the gym, you might be more inclined to start your workout with foam rolling. So you're habit stacking your soft tissue work with your gym session. Very easy example there. It might be if you're going for a walk, you pick up your phone and call your mom or dad. And now you're kind of checking off, and it's this idea of 2 birds, 1 stone, or this idea of just getting multiple things done together. But really the idea, the secret sauce to a habit stack is that one habit initiates the thought process to another. So if I could induct into the Hall of Fame something in sports performance, it would be unique habit stacking for individuals, whether that be some type of nutritional stack, whether that be some type of sports performance stack, whether that be some type of recovery modality stack. But this idea of saying we need to be consistent is great. I do think we need to have some level of consistency to show up, do the thing, and move on with our life and improve performance, etc. But what does that really mean? What's one way we can do that? Is to figure out the habit stack pairing that's going to allow you to remember to do the thing that you either don't want to do or can't remember to always do. So habit stacking would be the thing that I would induct into the Hall of Fame for sports performance. I know it's not maybe a traditional answer, but it is something that I've used with athletes, with coaches, with other industry professionals. Something we talked about is where you can really now start to piece together just the time that you have available to do the different things. I know that's, for me, it's how I started listening to audiobooks in the car, driving to and from work. It just becomes a habit. I get in the car, I go to work, I listen to a book. I used to wake up on Sunday mornings, I would pour a cup of coffee, and I would read an article or 2 from the Journal of Strength Conditioning, from, I think, published by Human Kinetics or the NSCA, whatever. But it became a habit that I would do, and I would stack it with other things, right? So that's huge because it improves consistency, which again would be the skill that I would love to induct, but I wanted to be a little bit more granular, give you guys something a little bit more to think about. But James Clear, Atomic Habits, if you haven't read it, please, after this podcast, Like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the things. Go get that book. It's really good. It's a phenomenal book. Thank you so much, guys, for enjoying this episode. If you're on video, I hope you like the fireside setting next to my cable machine. If you are listening to this podcast, that means that I did a phenomenal job with my new camera settings. But I appreciate you all for letting me break in this new camera. I appreciate pod producer Josh for dealing with whatever video and audio files he's about to get from me. And if you guys like this AMA style, either throw in the comments questions you would like us to answer, whether it be myself, Bill Parisi, or someone from the Parisi Network. We can make it happen. But we'll do more of these as well in the future. And I hope you guys are there to dance. So have a great rest of your week, and I will see you all in the next episode.